Okay, I don't think that you actually truly understand just it's beautiful. The Steam Deck is a rare exception in today's market where it feels like you're actually getting what you paid for and it's worth the value. Meanwhile, Nintendo are releasing a $70 spin-off game for Pokemon that's on a key card of all things. Did you hear that? It's on a key card, a hollow piece of plastic. Which is why I look at this thing every once in a while to just remind myself that it's gonna be okay. And for the longest time, I've just been like on my hands and knees like, please, Mr. Newell, give me a Steam Deck Mini, that's all I ask. Like, can you comprehend just how game-changing it would be to have this inside of this? And with the latest news that we got last week, it's happening. Valve basically just took a megalodon-sized turd and dropped it on top of everybody, and I mean that in the best way possible. 3 new pieces of hardware, all carving out their own lane, clearly indicating that Valve have learned from their previous mistakes with their first renditions of hardware, which was kind of rough, and now they're here to just steal the spotlight. The Steam Machine is literally a modern-day rendition of a GameCube. It is almost the same size as this lunchbox, except the internals are that of a powerful mini PC. Valve are claiming that this cube can give you 6 times the performance of a Steam Deck, and then on top of that, you can expect around 4K 60 FPS in most of your games, but obviously it's going to depend on the settings, and that's kind of like a really generic statement, so I wouldn't really listen to that too much. Either way, it will use FSR to boost the frame rate and should give you an enjoyable experience all in this little tiny little cube form factor. Where's my GameCube? This is literally, we're getting this again. The Steam controller is by far the most predictable out of the 3. It's, you know, as people are saying, literally just a Steam Deck cut in half without the screen, glued together. I will say I'm not the biggest fan of the Steam Deck's D-pad, but everything else about the trackpads and the controls themselves are pretty dang solid, and I think this is going to be my go-to controller if it lives up to the reputation of the deck. And finally, the device that has been the focal point of the entire handheld scene, Valve's new VR headset called the Frame. And no, we're not just hyped about this thing having extra buttons on the controllers. We are hyped because this like 1984 dystopian looking headset is going to be running SteamOS without the need of another PC. It's going to have the ability to run the operating system completely by itself. And when you check to see the specs of it, you'll see that it's built with an ARM-based chip. This is the same chip that's used in a ton of different handhelds across the scene. The Ein Thor, the Odin 2, the Conquer Pocket Fit, the new Retroid Pocket 6 that's coming out. All of these handhelds are using a similar style chip, which means that Valve are taking SteamOS, the thing that's in a Steam Deck, and teaching it how to run on a chip that is also installed in all of these devices. And they're doing this through their own Duolingo translation layer that's converting things from PC games over to ARM. Speaking of Duolingo, I've been trying to learn Spanish for the past couple of years, and the only thing that I know how to say in this context is no quiero vivir mi vida porque no tengo un Steam Deck Mini. Essentially, Valve are establishing a consistent and reliable way to run SteamOS and Steam games in a market and world that's already flooded with these ARM-based chips. This is huge because PC gaming on Android is already happening through apps like Gamehub Lite or Gamenative, but if you've used these things at all, you'll know it's a little bit rough around the edges and not perfect, and Valve are just coming in here and saying, hold on a second, let's just make this easier for you. And once SteamOS cleanly runs on ARM with Valve support behind it, this doesn't just stay locked and contained with the frame. I'm not sure how it's going to go down, but in an ideal world that I think is going to happen sooner than we think, we'll be able to log in easily through our Steam accounts, download whatever Steam game that we want, and hopefully run it pretty smoothly on an Android device. And don't just take my word for it, Valve themselves have already expressed their excitement that I share with them. This is already fully open source, so you could download it and run SteamOS. Now that we will be releasing SteamOS for ARM, you could have gaming on any ARM device. So yes, it's not just me telling you that we might just get the chance to turn whatever we want to into a Steam Deck, so long as it's got the power. Now, if you don't think a mini Steam Deck would be sick, I'm gonna force you to reconsider right now. This right here is my Ein Thor playing Steam games locally. I'm not streaming this. I installed this on the device through apps that are able to give us just a small taste of what the future might actually hold for us. Software and apps like Gamehub Lite and Gamenative let you log into Steam, find a game, and install it right there on the device. And I gotta say, as somebody who's been playing Steam games since 2011, this scratches a very unique itch of mine. I obviously adore the Steam Deck, and it is like the handheld that you're going to buy if you just want one handheld that can do pretty much everything and will give you top of the line experience. Like, yes, you get a Steam Deck. A lot of people use Steam Decks as like their main source for gaming. They don't even have any PCs or anything else. But for my specific use case, I almost exclusively play indie games on this machine. And I don't know if you've ever held a Steam Deck before, but like this thing, it is a chunky boy, which obviously helps in the ergonomics, and it's extremely comfortable to use, but it is a bit of an anchor that sometimes even putting it inside of my backpack can feel a bit much. It's not a handheld that I find myself wanting to leave the house with, but instead a handheld that I just want to stay on the couch with. Bars. And this right here is the gap that a Steam Deck Mini would perfectly fill. Fitting it inside of your pocket might be a bit of a stretch to aim for, but having something smaller and less intrusive to play these fantastic Steam games on the go has been a dream of mine ever since I've had a Steam account. These smaller types of form factors are actually why I fell in love with retro handhelds to begin with. They remind me so much of the Nintendo handhelds that I grew up with, which weren't the most comfortable devices. I mean, like, the DS Lite is literally just a rectangle and not the most comfortable thing, but all of these Nintendo consoles were designed with portability in mind for you to either keep it in your pocket or easily slip this into a bag. I'm using the Thor right now as my main example because it's a clamshell and my personal favorite candidate for what a mini Steam Deck should or could be. I can close this thing up without worrying about the screen, throw it in a bag, and have it on me for random gaming sessions whenever I'm out, and it doesn't feel super intrusive on my lifestyle. The crazy part is that with Gamehub and Gamenative, we're already scratching the surface of this Steam DS concept, but it's nowhere near perfect right now. There's a limited amount of games that actually work, and even the ones that do work require some type of tinkering and for you to mess around with the settings for a good chunk of time. It's very far from being a seamless experience. But even with all of the tinkering and going into the settings, this undeniably feels magical. Any form factor, especially for me, one that looks like a 3DS, playing Steam games is such a sight to behold. It's just like that feeling I talked about in another video where I installed Steam on my mom's crappy work laptop so I could play Terraria anywhere on the go. It hits that same type of vein here. We've almost been conditioned to think of these Steam games to be bound by our PCs, but with the creation of the Steam Deck and now SteamOS for ARM, our world is slowly starting to open up. So instead of playing games right on my PC, I have the freedom to walk 3 steps onto the couch now. Additionally, I find it really important to think about just how much extra value that this brings to any type of handheld. Whether it's your phone that's running Android or a retro handheld that you just bought or maybe bought a while ago, having the option to play Steam games efficiently and smoothly opens up an ocean of opportunities. It's going to be a disaster for our backlogs because, you know, with retro handhelds, we're already facing the problem of abundance where we don't even know what to play because there's just so many options. And then adding the Steam catalog on this just means we're never gonna finish any of our backlog, which is genuinely just a refreshing feeling in today's market, because most of these companies prefer to limit your options as a consumer, whether it's through like subscription pricing models or purposely locking down hardware and software. You'll oftentimes just end up feeling more shackled by the thing that you just purchased than anything else. And thankfully, Valve are doubling down on the opposite approach. They're mentioning it as much as they can in their marketing that this is an open PC ecosystem. This man is just gunning for an extra yacht, dude. I am convinced. We don't know all the details yet. This is a lot of speculation, and like there's so many different routes that Steam games could take on these devices. Will we see an official Steam app that lets you download and install Steam games right there on your device? Or, you know, maybe Valve focus mostly on the frame and then publicly drop SteamOS for ARM and let the community do the rest of the heavy lifting. There's a lot to uncover here. You've got Valve engineers openly saying they see a ton of potential for ARM across handhelds, laptops, and whatever weird devices come next, but they're also being real about the fact that this isn't one clean path. They're experimenting in public. They're building this translation technology so that games can actually run on the ARM hardware, and they're talking about greasing the wheels to make SteamOS more reliable on a wider range of devices. But at the same time, they're admitting that today's ARM chips might not hit that true Steam Deck style performance that we'd all want and expect to see. And with how much emphasis they're putting on this technology, I think a lot of us are expecting the next Steam Deck or Steam Deck 2 to be an ARM-based chip. It's really important to lighten expectations, though. I know I've been polishing Valve's ego for the past 11 minutes at this point, and at the end of the day, Valve have even admitted that the frame is a wireless streaming headset first and foremost. They've built the hardware and software around the frame specifically. SteamOS for ARM won't be plug and play for every single handheld, and even with it being open source, there's still going to be a lot of headaches involving a lot of issues that I'm too much of an idiot to comprehend. It's not like Valve are coming in here with the intention of like, you've got a handheld that you got from China? You got this Chinese retro handheld? Let's put SteamOS on it. Every handheld gets SteamOS. The roadmap seems a little bit blurry, and it's going to depend on, how fast this hardware can catch up to whatever it is that Valve are doing, and, vice versa with their development on that translation layer, how efficient it is, what types of CPUs will work well. Maybe the newer releases that we've got in the gaming scene for retro handhelds will be enough, or maybe it won't be powerful enough. I don't know. A lot is up in the air, but either way, we're making a lot of progress just with the release of the frame. What we do know is that this software will get into the hands of the public. Valve have confirmed that it will be open source, and they're going to be giving us SteamOS on ARM, which honestly is perfect to me, because if you know anything about the SBC community, you know that there are some dedicated, hardworking people who love this stuff and are going to use whatever it is that Valve give them to create something magnificent. Ideally, if SteamOS becomes stable on ARM at scale, then potentially every Retroid, Ein, or Anbernic Android slab that gets released could have SteamOS on it, or be so easily thrown onto the device that you'll have, like I said, a mini Steam Deck. It's not going to happen overnight, but this does feel like just a big hurdle and roadblock has been lifted because of the release of the frame, and that's why I've literally been yapping and rambling about this for so long. I am so hyped about this. I've been making videos and theorizing what a mini Steam Deck would be like for honestly since I got a Steam Deck, and I made a couple of videos about it, and now to see it come to fruition so soon gets me hyped. Valve truly represents the duality of mankind. Like, on one side, they're responsible for in-game loot boxes and gambling, and then on the other side, they're just like pushing gaming forward and paving the way for handhelds and this open ecosystem. But with how much I love this new hardware, I don't know how much I can forgive them for what they're doing to Team Fortress 2.
Violent, that's what we show, not private. Better keep to yourself, stay silent. If it come to the wealth, get violent. Start riots, violent. This why my money, my